when I was going to come here, I went to Amsterdam not too long ago, and I really kind of like stuck out with all the America gear. So coming here, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to the mall. I'm going to like get like some dark, like better fitting clothes and everything. And you know, you guys wear it and it looks all stylish, and I put it on and just look like a burglar. It's not fair at all. So yeah, I'm Ken Wheeler, Ken_Wheeler on Twitter, if you are into reading absolute trash. And I work at Formidable, Seattle-based consultancy. And before we get started, I want to be very clear. This is a talk that, yeah, I usually don't give the same talk twice, but I'm giving this one sort of twice, maybe like 1.5. I don't know. Because I had to retool it a little after speaking to some people. And the first time that I had spoke about this, I think it was a little bit of misinterpretation as to what I was necessarily getting at. So I want to be super clear that I want the web to win. I love the web a lot. And if I'm angry or, you know, shit posting or what have you, it's just tough love because I'm so angry because I see the potential. So with that out of the way, I also want to have a context for this talk around mobile, right? So I'm not talking about the desktop web. You know, Chrome desktop, you can do all kinds of things, and you know, you're not really held back, and it's a good time. However, what I'm building for these days is mobile, right? And the future of the web is mobile, so we should focus on mobile, because there's a lot of stuff that works on Chrome desktop, but does not work on phones. Yeah, so why are phones awesome? Why the focus on phones? A number of different things, right? They're great because they're portable. They're with you at all times. They have, you know, capabilities that a laptop doesn't have. You know, things like camera. I mean, laptops have GPS, but like you're not like carrying a laptop around with you like one of those people taking pictures with an iPad. You know, like you have your motion tracking, your accelerator, gyroscope, etc. Microphone and speech recognition, which I can't do on the phone, which kind of drives me insane. And touch, right? Finger touch. Again, not really super exploited, but that's what makes phones great, right? And I'm very sad to announce, if you didn't know it, that the web has already lost on mobile devices, right? 90% of time that people are spending on their phone is in apps, not in their browser, right? They're in regular native apps, right? So, you know, it's lost, but has it really lost? Because there's an interesting thing about that, right? When they're in these apps, right, you're in apps like Twitter and Facebook, and they have their own built-in browsers right in there. So, you know, they're aggregating the content. If you look, you know, at like Facebook, you know, it's not apps, right? But it's like, you know, you have like your 25 reasons you shouldn't listen to Ken Wheeler blog articles, and right, they're getting served up through these social apps. So that 90% in apps is probably inaccurate based upon that, right? You have your Twitter embed and your Facebook embed, right? So maybe not the web, maybe not static content, but web apps have absolutely lost on mobile devices, and that's a shame, right? So what's the problem here, right? First, performance. It doesn't feel good. It feels shitty. And, it takes long to load. And you know, the mobile web is far less capable than, you know, native apps, right? The things that, the device capabilities that you're exposed to. And it is not particularly suited for application development, having done both. So the first point to touch on is performance here, right? You have less processing power on your mobile devices than you would on your desktop. So something that looks cool on your computer, you go on your mobile phone and it's jank city. And then, you know, you're not on a wired connection or, you know, like home cable Wi-Fi. So you have variable network speeds and connectivity along with large bundle sizes, which just makes it a very sluggish experience. Next up is capability, right? So you're not only do you not have the base capability that you would in like a native app, but even for like the web APIs that exist, mobile browsers lag far behind their desktop counterparts, which is a shame because mobile should be the absolute focus. And one of the biggest things is that touch is gross, and touch really should be better for a web on mobile as a primary citizen. And it is not. I mean, the web itself is not particularly suited for apps. The current architecture is for documents, right? You're not working with platform UI. You're literally building apps out of what's essentially MS Word primitives. And because it's a vendor-locked browser model, right? Maybe not so much on the Android side of things, but I mean on iOS, like you don't really have a choice of what browser engine you're going to use. So there's not a damn thing you can do about it, which is even more frustrating. So let's talk about the state of the mobile web a little bit and how we got there, right? So mobile web 2017. It's absolutely disgusting. There's ads everywhere, which is one of the biggest causes of the slowdowns. It's loading slow. Not everything's loading slow. People who do the aPWA thing, it's loading pretty fast. But generally speaking, it's slow loading time. You're constantly getting popovers to install the native app for the better experience on the native app, even when the capability's not there. And an interesting thing when developing for mobile web versus, like I do a lot of React Native. And when you're making native apps, you can't just take a desktop website and scale it down and make the UI fit and call it a mobile app, because it's not. When you're dealing with mobile apps, the users have a different set of expectations, and you need to account for that. So a lot of the time, these mobile sites are really just sized down desktop sites and don't really add the stuff that people are expecting out of what could be a mobile app, right? So how did we get here? So this fellow right here, and the first time I gave this talk, I didn't have the sir on there. I added the sir. Got to respect the fella. So Tim Berners-Lee goes ahead and creates the first browser and HTML in 1990. The browser, and I didn't know this, that the browser was called the World Wide Web. Not just like the whole, I thought it was like the whole thing, but the actual browser that he created, the first web browser, was called World Wide Web. And it was created to share research documents, which is why we have a document model today, right? It was never intended for making applications, right? It was for documents. So then along comes this fellow, Mr. Brendan Eich. He invents JavaScript. So now these documents can come alive. Right? We have interactivity. Things can happen. It's not just static documents in your browser. After that, if people are given the ability to make an app on the web, they're going to make an app on the web. So you start to see a lot of libraries crop up. Things like Dojo, jQuery, MooTools, right? And they're going to get put in place to simplify browser APIs that are gross and fragmented. There's a lot of fragmentation at the time. Not so much anymore. But there's still stuff because the APIs are gross. And in saying that the APIs are gross, I want to put a disclaimer on that because I talk a lot of crap about browser APIs. After having spoken to some of the implementers and PMs on browser teams, a great example of this is, when they brought out query selector all and it returned a node list, I was like, are you kidding me? And, okay, I got to convert this to an array like every single time. So I was bitching about that. And I spoke to one of these guys, and they were like, there's actually a really good reason for that. And that was legacy compatibility with VB script. You couldn't just cast directly to a JavaScript array. And I was like, oh. So, the API still sucks, but there's actually a very good reason for a lot of these things that are problems. And much of it is rooted in legacy compatibility. Additionally, you start to see a lot of widget libraries crop up, right? Because we're building apps, right? We want app style UI, and that doesn't exist natively on the platform. I mean, you have kind of simple stuff like general form elements, but I don't know if you guys remember like jQuery mobile. Like when that first came out, I was like super excited because now you have like all these things all these components that should be in apps but aren't in the browser. Right? Because it's built for, documents and forms and not making apps. Right? So then HTML5 comes along and it starts to introduce app-centric features, better stuff. Things like, video, audio. You get new browser APIs, drag and drop, canvas, geolocation, web audio, et cetera. Things that are really going to make the web a little bit more capable. So, there was a lot of bets on it. A lot of people said, hey, time to build apps, right? Time to, we don't need a native app, right? We can do this all in web technology and get that cross-platform benefit now, right? Wrong. So this is a quote from Mark Zuckerberg, right? He said, the biggest mistake we made as a company was betting too much on HTML5 as opposed to native. It wasn't ready. It turns out good enough wasn't good enough. Facebook lost untold amount of money betting on HTML5, knowing full well that it wasn't quite there, but kind of giving it a chance. And we saw how that turned out. So enter progressive web apps. What is a PWA? So PWA stands for Performant Websites for Android. I'm kidding, I'm sorry. No, it stands for Progressive Web Apps. And what a PWA is it's a web app that follows like a Google-specified set of performance recommendations from their website. A progressive web app uses modern web technologies or capabilities to deliver an app-like user experience, right? So they aim to look and feel like an app, right? Before I get any further into this, I just want to let you know that I think PWAs are great. That's another thing that people misinterpreted, that I'm somehow anti-PWA, which is not the case. I'm very pro-PWA. In fact, just to show you how pro-PWA I am, this presentation that you're looking at is a PWA. How about that? Yeah, so problems with the conference internet, no problem. So I'm definitely pro-PWA and drinking beer on stage. But here's where they fall short, right? They don't actually look and feel native. They're damn close, but not 100% there. Another thing that's funny is, there's not that much new technology introduced with PWAs, aside from Service Worker. Essentially what you're doing is you're saying, here's the platform that we have. Here's this new Service Worker thing, which is, it's tight. However, given the platform that we have, here's a set of recommendations on how to build like the perfect app, and it's restrictions that you have to follow to, and perf and size budgets that you need to stay within for this stuff to work right. So you're dealing with platform limitations by imposing restrictions, rather than making the platform better, digging into the root causes of these things. And most of the time, they don't replace native apps. Right? And most of the new features only work on half of phones. That's mean. I know Service Worker's coming out on Safari, but so what are PWAs good for, right? They're great for things that shouldn't be apps, right? They should have called it progressive websites, but they say apps. Things that could be a web app should be a web app, and they should be a PWA. Other things flat out cannot be a web app, like Instagram can't be a web app. We don't have the technology to do exactly what Instagram does, so that can be a web app, right? But something like like Reddit or something like that, there's no reason that shouldn't be a PWA. It absolutely should be. Also, use cases where offline is critical. I got the PWA in this presentation, as a side benefit of making my framework have a React scripts thing. So it kind of gives me the Service Worker for free. But it's amazing because, conference internet is, this is actually decent conference internet, but, it's notoriously bad. And, not having internet to present on is a big thing. So I was really excited when I got that Service Worker, because there are certain times when I'm offline, mostly like the first and last 20 minutes of a plane ride or on stage at a conference. And PWAs are a generally good list of site building recommendations. PWAs is like a marketing term. It's not like an actual thing. But I'm not anti-PWA. It should be called a list of how to not build a shitty website. Why would you tell anyone to build a shitty website? It's all good things, and you should do it. right? And another thing that's kind of funny is, with these PWAs, you can actually build some super impressive things. So I kind of wonder why they take a page that looks like it's from 1992 and doesn't use JavaScript, and that's the shining example of modern web technology. Everybody does the PWA HN. I think we can do better than that, right? So PWAs are not going to replace native apps, at least yet. We have a couple of things that we need to figure out. They're certainly worth doing, but they're not going to replace native apps. Which brings me to AMP, which is a whole new thing. So AMP is accelerated mobile pages. It said Google AMP, but it's not technically Google AMP. But, I mean, come on, it's like Google AMP. It's a subset of HTML.js, right? It's pre-cached, stripped down, and instant loaded. You've probably encountered this on searches. I actually, fundamentally, I don't like it. But when I'm hanging out reading things, I do like it because it's so quick. But essentially what they're doing is they're creating a sandbox where you're like stuff that shouldn't be an app, or stuff that shouldn't be slow is just loads up instantly, right? And it sucks because it's for things that should be fast anyway, right? We shouldn't have to have like this sandboxed pre-cached thing. And why it really sucks is that it's within this Google isolation, right? And they're giving it preferential search results, right? You get the AMP carousel, and right? So 2017. That's an actual satellite photo. Sorry, I'm from America, so. So our present day problem set, right? We're drowning in JavaScript, right? Our JavaScript bundles are huge. I sit there and look at Webpack we need to support rich experiences. There's technologies on the horizon, things like VR and AR that, right now we're not in a position to work with. I mean, there's definitely people working on this, but people are not going to want anything but more from our browsers, and we're not. We're hitting the edges of the web right now with what we can do, given the current technology. And there's also a lot of concerns about security, privacy, and freedom on the web. Freedom, America. So why are our bundles so large? First off, there's inefficient browser APIs, right? So they're giving you these browser APIs that are kind of hard to work with, so you need a library, right? You need things like you have your polyfills, you have your like npm install history, right? History, like the history API itself needs a library for it to actually be usable, right? Dates, right? You need moment or date FNS to actually work with dates, because like the regular date stuff is just like ugh. So we're jacking our bundles up with all the good API stuff getting forced on us in userland. Also, lack of platform primitives, which brings us back to the whole document-based thing. Because if you look at web apps and you look at some of the widgetry that you're using in these web apps, and I know because I've built a couple of them that are popular and on the internet, and I feel terrible because they're big things for things that should be solved problems. Your things like your carousels and your selects and your calendars and everything like that. Where you hundreds and hundreds of kilobytes of JavaScript to provide something that should just be built into the browser. It's just waste. It's not actual site logic or anything like that. It's just there, and then it's got its dependencies, and it's just this compound of building things out of toothpicks and glue. We're basically hacking MS Word to run apps is where we're at now. So this is essentially what we're doing here. The taped on cardboard spoiler. So one of the reasons that we can't do this, we can't build these rich experiences, is that browsers aren't general purpose renderers, they're document renderers, right? Also the touch and gesture handling isn't up to par, as far as making it feel like a native app would respond. And again, we are using those document primitives, which is a big problem. And for security and privacy, I think we all know that if something is free, we are indeed the product. I don't think at any point in history have companies known more about us and They pass our information around, our personal information, like a blunt at a frat party. It's ridiculous. Something's got to be done about that. Also, for mobile specifically, right? 2 companies control your access to the mobile web. On desktop, you have a lot of options, but I mean, generally speaking, it's Google or Apple, and that's all you can do, right? And one of them doesn't play ball. Also, another thing is censorship by large companies, right? So you have these platforms, but these aren't apolitical companies. So that brings up some interesting ethical stuff around, is it a free and open web? And what are the implications of having a company that can, kind of just shut stuff down based upon its own corporate values or what have you? So I'm of the opinion that we need a radically reimagined web, and we definitely need a better browser, right? So how can we fix it? Right? Approach 1. So I'm not the kind of guy who's going to come up here and talk shit on the web and not try and fix it personally. So I'll show you guys how I went about doing it, and that's an app browser. Right? So before I get into that, people are going to ask, why don't we just build native apps and keep the browser for static sites? I'll tell you, right? So with native apps, it's not that great over there either, right? Having made some native apps, now I wouldn't want to just build native apps. In native land, it's really hard to get your app discovered. If you build a native app, I mean, like if you look at the App Store, it's not like the web where you can just go to this or that. You have to come up in search results, and you have to be discovered. The distribution isn't free and open. Like right now, I could push a site to the internet in like 5 seconds, and it's there, right? With native apps, you really got to jump through hoops. Although it's gotten a lot better. Last one I did, it was like a 24-hour approval time. But it's not instant. So, but the experience on native apps is outstanding. Right? It feels right because it's it's the platform that you're on, and it's an app, so it's going to feel good. It's going to be a bit more responsive. Now, web apps, on the other hand, right? The discovery is outstanding. You can throw something up and people can find it. People can get to it. It's free and open distribution. You could push it out in 5 seconds and tweet out a link and everyone's there, and it's that quick. But the experience leaves a little bit to be desired, right? So I ask, why not both? Why not take the best of both worlds and combine it into one thing, right? An app browser, right? So not like instant apps where you're going to go and it's just going to load the app, but it uses URLs. You have URLs you can go to, and it'll continue to use the URL. It'll load regular websites if you're on a regular website. On a native enabled site, it'll load native app code. Right, and you'll get native primitives that it's displaying, right? And the current, you're not breaking compatibility, legacy compatibility with the web. It's just gonna render platform primitives, right? So you're gonna ask, wouldn't we need a cross-platform API bridge to native in order to do this? It turns out we do. React Native is that. React Native gives you this abstracted API where you're getting platform primitives in one place, and then you can render them however you want, right? So you may ask, how would I build this browser? And I'll show you, because I did build it. So here is my, that looks hard. So this is a browser that I built in React Native. And it acts like a regular web browser. You can go to regular sites. Go on, go down, go to your fake news. But if you want to go to a native site, right, you can go to that. It'll ask you open native enhanced app, and it loads up Kenstagram. It's like Instagram, but it's all my pictures, so it's way better. And that's native app code running in the browser. And then you hit the plus button, and now you can take pictures and all this fun stuff. And it works. This is possible. So I'll tell you how it actually works. It works like a regular browser. You have back, forward, history, maintains history and everything like that. But it's really just React Native with a web view, right? It'll load HTML based upon your URL. But if it's a native enabled site, it'll load a React Native bundle, right? It'll just load that in and kind of hide the web view. So it'll show one or the other. And you can navigate seamlessly between apps and sites, right? Under the hood, what's happening is when you hit the HTML, right, the index.html, that's going to send a bundle URL via post message to the actual web view. The browser is going to hide it. It's going to load the app bundle, and it's going to mount it right into the root view component with hooks and whatnot. So it looks kind of like this, where you would kind of just post up that Redux-looking object thing there with the bundle. So you might ask, what about browsers that don't support this? Right? If you make this native-enabled site, what about the 99.99% of people who aren't going to download Ken Wheeler's browser? I've solved it with a concept that I call regressive enhancement. Right? So when you have like a really sweet app and then you go on a browser that doesn't support it, right? You just fall back to like the shittier web version using React Native Web. If you haven't heard of React Native Web, what it does is you take React Native code that normally would render to the platform, and they've polyfilled it for the web. So it'll take those things and it'll render them right to the web. So you just alias React Native to React Native Web in your build script and your Webpack configuration. And then if anything is different between the two, because obviously certain things aren't going to work the same. I'll show you a specific example of where like the camera doesn't work on iOS the same way, so you can't de-enhance to that. But you can use environment variables to do different behavior, right? So here's an example of Safari on iOS. You could go to the site. So this is the same app, but it's on the web, all right? But when you hit that plus button there, now instead of popping up that sweet take a picture view, now it's going to default to how that actually works on the web. So you don't get this cool sweet preview view. It's just like this janky web API, whatever. But you can load up most of your app and have a functioning application on the web for people that don't support it. So there is a legacy support story. Right? So I know what you're all asking. When is this incredible piece of technology getting released? It's not. Never, ever, ever. First of all, it's wrong. It's not like, it's cool to like prove that you could do it that way. Like, hey, look, this is possible. Like if like some like guy can drunkenly build this in 2 weekends, I think that browsers could probably do it, so it's not impossible. But yeah, that would never, ever make it through the App Store. Are you kidding me? Ever. But something like it sort of exists now. I don't know if anybody's heard of this, but it's called aPWA, and it's awesome. It's really, really good. If you ever do React Native development, I recommend using aPWA to do it. What it does is it runs React Native apps. It's an app that you install on your phone, and if you're building React Native apps, you can use it as like that'll be like your dev view on your phone. Additionally, you can publish apps, right? And you can browse them in aPWA, apps that other people have published or apps that you have published. So it's like an app browser, but without like the actual like working with websites component. And I mean, if you're doing any kind of React Native development, I can't recommend it enough. It's default on Create React Native App. So +1 for aPWA. Right? So another approach that we could take that I think would be kind of cool is Wasman WebGL. Right? So you compile code, right? Whether it's Rust or C or what have you, compile that to Wasm, and then render your UI in WebGL, which solves a lot of the performance problems that you would normally see working with the DOM. But we're kind of a ways out on that, and there's some problems. Number one is that there's no WebGL. I mean, besides browser support, but there's no WebGL like layout UI libs really for for like doing like not game type stuff. Like if you just wanted to like lay out an app. Additionally, accessibility isn't like a solved problem there. Another one that you could do, and this is probably the most practical solution here, and I just found out about this, and this is awesome, are these proposed APIs They're proposed to the What Working Group by Yehuda Katz. All right, DOM change list and DOM tree construction, and this would pretty radically solve a lot of these problems that I've been talking about. DOM change list lets you construct and apply a number of DOM operations at once, right? So rather than these like consecutive, like sort of blocking operations taking place, you could create a whole batch of changes right there and just blap, right? It's like a native virtual DOM. Additionally is DOM tree construction. So what these APIs will give you is you can bypass HTML. Right now, to get into the DOM, you kind of have to have HTML created for that to work. But if you can write directly to the render tree, write directly to the DOM and bypass HTML, this would solve a lot of problems. So if you want to see a better web, I would recommend slapping a thumbs up on that one, on the proposal. And another one worth considering is better browser primitives. Right, and this is something that browsers could do personally, right? I mean, we can render Doom in a browser, a full Doom game, but if you load up like a 1,500 items into a list, the thing's going to jank out. That's a big problem. So I think like a native list view would be huge. Also, common widgets like calendars, fixed dates. Make selects styleable, and that's like a huge one, because like selects, like not only are you adding all this weight by like trying to like do this custom select thing so that like you can please your designers and all the other stakeholders, but you're fucking up accessibility. And yeah, if we could just have a styleable select, that'd be great. And carousels. As a manufacturer of a leading carousel, I would love nothing more than to deprecate that entirely. And better APIs for things like history, DOM traversal dates, so that imagine if your bundle is just your app logic, generally speaking, and a little bit of styling, right? It wasn't trying to build all these things. They're fake, right? It's this like calendar on the web. It's fake. It's not. It's built out of divs and spans like a dork. We shouldn't have to do that. It's ridiculous. Back to like the security and privacy thing. I wanted to show this. There's a new browser called Beaker browser, which you might want to keep an eye on, which is pretty cool. This is out of the rendering problem space and into the security problem space. It's a browser that rethinks the web as a peer-to-peer network, right? So users own their own data, and you can create and host a site from your browser and your machine. So I'd highly recommend checking that out. That's a really cool one, and I think that's a big piece moving forward of what the next web could look like. And another thing is Brave. Brave specifically is bananas, and that fella who did that stuff before, like the whole inventing JavaScript and whatnot. He's a part of that. So what Brave does is it blocks tracking and ads, right? Which almost immediately translates into a better user experience on the web. Because ads fuck everything up, and this kind of unfucks that a little bit. And it shares less data with your ad customers. And they have a new thing, which is actually really cool, where you can set up like an account and do micropayments, like a percentage. So you're essentially paying content producers in Bitcoin. So the people that ad blockers would normally be robbing of ad revenue, right? You're able to say like, hey, hold the ads, but here's a couple pence, and it stays fair, right? You're not sacrificing your experience for the content. You're just giving them like micro pennies, which I think is a really cool idea, and that's how it should be. So really, with all this, I don't hate the web. I love the web, and I want to see it get better. And I think that if we want to provide our users a better experience, we need to build a better web before someone else comes and builds something else and replaces it. And I think that time is now. So, thanks so much, everybody.